Welcome back, everybody. So today is a super exciting day because today is the culmination of a 2-year-long project that I have poured my heart, my soul, and hundreds of man-hours into. And what I think I've created here is the most comprehensive and exhaustive property inspection checklist that you will ever need to get all of your properties turned around as fast as possible. You see, vacant properties are a liability rather than an asset, and our main goal here is to get them turned around as fast as possible. Whether you're a property manager, a handyman, a realtor, or even an investor, I think you're going to find this to be the most comprehensive property inspection system available on the internet today. And here we are at the property where I'm going to walk you through the entire process, and when we're done, I'm going to make this list available to you for free. Now, before we start, I do want to give credit to 𝗪𝗪𝗪, which was critical in the creation of this checklist. I have worked harder in the last 3 years than I ever thought was possible, and I've built my own American dream, and my American dream is powered by 𝗪𝗪𝗪. There's just simply nothing else like that on the market. So if you'd like to try 𝗪𝗪𝗪 for yourself, you can click my link down in the description below where you can get a free 14-day trial and 20% off for the first 6 months. And without further ado, all right, guys, so we're going to start in the kitchen now, and we're just going to go straight to the sink. So one of the first things you want to do, obviously, is just test the water. Test it on hot, test it on cold, make sure the water actually gets hot. If you can get a thermometer, it's really good to test the water temperature because you do need to verify that it's not hot enough to burn children. And while you're testing the water, you want to watch for water and leaks coming out of here around the handle. You also want to watch for it around the base and where the entire faucet turns down here. And then you want to take, if you have your stoppers, which you need to make sure they're present and they're not on this one, but you want to put a stopper in both sinks and get that starting to fill up. Now, while that's filling up, you can come down here to the cabinet, and down below what you're going to want to be looking at is you're going to want to feel along all of these pipes and make sure nothing feels wet yet, because we're going to be feeling again later to see if we have any leaks. So while those are filling up, we're going to come over here and just turn on that real quick. There we go. The garbage disposal works great. All of our drain lines work good. You're going to have your shutoff valves in the back. Now you want to check with your property managers or whomever it is you're doing the inspection for. Make sure they want you to test those shutoff valves, because most of these have not been opened for years and years, or closed rather for years and years. And because they haven't been used, they're very likely to fail during your test. So make sure they want you to test those, because it is going to create a lot of extra work if and when they fail. Now, once the sink is full, with one dry hand, you're going to pull both plugs, flip on the garbage disposal, and come down below and watch and feel for leaks, because that garbage disposal is actually going to pressurize the water down those drain lines, and I suggest doing that twice, although it's okay if you only do it once. Moving over here to the dishwasher, when you first come in the house, it's a good idea to do this part. You don't have to do this list all in order. You just need to reference the list to make sure you get it all done. So you want to pull the racks out, make sure they slide good, check on the bottom, make sure there's no melted plastic on the heater coil there. Just make sure everything is in place inside this dishwasher, and then while you're here, go ahead and just start a cycle and close it and get that cycle running. That's going to let you know later on. You're going to find out if there's any leaks, including under the sink where the dishwasher drains into the garbage disposal. Next is all the cabinets. So you want to open them up. You want to make sure all your shelves are there. You want to make sure all your pins for the shelves are there. Often there'll just be 3 pins in each shelf because somebody stole a pin for another shelf. You also want to wiggle all the doors and just make sure that your hinges are all tight. And also, to go along with the cabinets, you want to check to see that you do have toe kick in place. And if it is in place, you also want to check to make sure that the toe kicks are not rotten. One thing I left out is actually the underside of this cabinet. Any sink cabinet, you want to look at the bottom of the cabinet. They're often going to be water damaged, and this is the time that you want to identify that while it's vacant so you can get a new bottom in there. Onto the stove. We're going to turn your hood on. High, medium, low. Works on all 3. Test your light out. The light is good. You also want to come up and check the filter. Now, whether this is a microwave that has a vent or whether it's just the range hood, they're all going to have these filters on them, so you want to make sure that is, number one, present, and number two, relatively clean. And if it's a microwave, go ahead and test out the microwave. I suggest, for example, right over here, there happens to be a jar in there, so I would just fill that with some water, stick it in the microwave, and make sure the microwave does in fact work, and test the microwave lights and test the microwave range hood option. Next thing you want to do, especially on electric stoves, is you want to turn all the burners to high. You also want to turn the oven on. You want to make sure it can handle that draw through the lines of having all of that. Also, your oven should have a light inside it, so you want to check and make sure that that light works right now. Now, the last thing that you have to check on ovens, if this one comes out, is an anti-tip device. You're going to find two styles mostly. One is a bracket on the floor that has a horseshoe cut into it that the foot slides under and can't come up. The other one's going to be a chain that screws into the wall and then screws in to the top of the range. And then you do want to test these drawers as well. Oftentimes they haven't been on their rails in forever. So you just want to pull that out and make sure that it's actually on the rails. Also, your drawers throughout the kitchen, you want to pull each drawer out. You want to make sure that they all slide nice and smoothly. And you want to look at the faces of these drawers, because oftentimes these faces get broken off, and prior handymen have come through and they basically just glued and stuck a bunch of extra nails and staples in those, and that doesn't last. So if you can identify that while the property is vacant, that's really the best time to get that done. Next, the freezer. When you check your freezers, if there's an ice maker, make sure that the ice maker works and makes ice. If there's a dispenser in the door, you also want to check that it dispenses the ice, and if it does crushed ice, make sure it dispenses crushed ice. You want to test the full functionality. You also want to test all of the shelves in the fridge and the freezer. For example, this one's broken right here. Now, who knows if this was done a long time ago or recently, but we can document it now so that we at least know the future tenant didn't do that. Same thing in the fridge. You want to wiggle all of these around and make sure they're all actually seated. Oftentimes these get broke and people just put them back and just sort of balance them in so it seems like they're good when they're not. But you've got like your meat drawer right here. That one's good. All these shelves are solid. Don't be afraid to put some weight on them and to put some pressure onto them, because this is the time when you do need to find out if they're broke. Now, your fridge also has an appliance bulb. You want to make sure that appliance bulb is on. Sometimes you'll have water filters down inside here. Sometimes they'll be under the fridge, or like this fridge, it doesn't have any at all. But if you do have a water filter and a water dispenser, you want to test the functionality of all of that. Now, there may be one or two very minor things that you want to look for in the kitchens. For example, if there's sometimes there's trim up here, or just any number of trims, you want to make sure that's all there. And you do just want to walk around and give it a good overall look. Look at the sides of the cabinets down here, make sure there's no water damage. But this is basically the whole list. So what I've done is I've walked you through and I've shown you my way of inspecting it, like my process, my order. But go by this list every single time and you won't miss anything. All right, guys, so let's check out a bathroom now. When you come into the bathroom, and just a reminder, this is a bathroom specific section. We're going to be looking at walls, ceilings, floors, doors, things like that in a separate section. But for the bathroom specific, let's just go ahead and start here at the countertop with a sink. You want to pull this up and down if you have a pop-up stopper installed, and make sure that that's actually working. Of course, you want to turn on the water. Now, oh, look at this. So you've got pieces falling off of the handle at the top. You've also got a very bad aerator here, but the pop-up stopper does in fact work. And while you do that, of course, if you don't have water spraying everywhere like we did here, you want to make sure you're not getting any leaks around the base, which it's looking to me like we may have. So then we're going to come down below. All right, so look at this. We've got a drip pan and a lot of water beneath the sink. But this is definitely something we're gonna write up. We have a major leak in here. Again, with the shutoff valves, just as with the kitchen, when we do these shutoff valves, we wanna have permission from whoever we're doing this inspection for and let them know in advance, hey, by the way, if we do these shutoff valves, if we test them, there's a decent 50-50 chance they may fail because we tested them. So wiggle these doors around, just like in the kitchen, make sure those hinges are tight. Pull all of the drawers out. As you can see, this one here won't shut all the way, so it looks like there's some stuff stuck back there, but that one won't shut all the way. This one's got water in it, so this is a super nice bathroom we got going on here. Oh, again, check the bottom of the cabinet for water damage, but we already know we have a leak, so there's very likely to be water damage in this cabinet. Also, while you're up here, check this mirror out and make sure that it's mounted good. It doesn't happen very frequently, but I have had 2 different places I worked on where the mirror, luckily nobody was in the bathroom, just fell off the wall. So make sure your mirrors are mounted very well. All right, guys, and once you've got this sink done, you come over here and you do the exact same check on this sink. Turn the water on and off, raise the stopper up and down, check for leaks around the base, check for signs of water damage and for active leaks on the bottom. Check your drawers, etc. Exact same process we did on this sink. And then come over here to the light switch. Go ahead and click on this fan, and if you listen, I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear the fan is in fact on. We've also got a little towel ring here, and it's nice and tight. And then finally, the medicine cabinet, you just want to open it up and check for rust and whatnot at the bottom. You also want to grab the door and just give it some good wiggles, make sure everything's mounted to the wall securely, which it seems like it is. So that's going to take care of this entire area as far as the bathroom specific. Now we will be back in here for some general walls and closets and doors and whatnot later, but right now we're testing just the bathroom specific stuff. So when you get to the bathtub, the first thing you can check is just all around. You're looking for all of the caulking. This one is kind of old and crappy. It's not in really great shape. It probably doesn't have to be recalked, but you want to make sure all the caulk all the way around, top to bottom, looks really good. You also want to make sure that you have a stopper down here on the bottom. This one doesn't. Most of these are pretty uniform. They sell universal stoppers for these. You want to check your overflow valve. This one is not connected super good, so we'll probably tighten that down. Go ahead and turn your water on. Just like everywhere else with the water, you want to check the hot and the cold. That looks fine. Test your shower. We don't have a whole lot of pressure, but that shower's working. You also want to look up here for leaks, and you want to look where that pipe goes into the wall for leaks, because sometimes you get a little bit coming out of there as well. Once you know that's good, you can go ahead and turn all that off. As far as the rest of the shower, there's not much else to look at as long as we verified that all of our water's working. And oh, also, by the way, many of them will have slider shower doors like bypass doors. These have wheels that hook on a track at the top, so you want to slide those back and forth, and you want to really make sure that they're nice and smooth as they slide. And I have had these come off on tenants before. Again, luckily not while they were in the shower, but those doors can fall off, so you want to check those connections out at the top. Also, if this were a standing shower, you would have a door that opens this way sometimes for the standing showers. You want to check the trim along the bottom of the door that keeps the water in there. Of course, check the hinges, check the magnets, check the handles, the latching mechanisms. And then finally, this is a big deal, and this is one of the only houses I've ever been to where these are basically good. But all your towel hooks, your towel bars, your toilet paper holders, your towel rings, all of these accessories that get mounted to the walls in the bathrooms, they're nearly always loose. And usually the way we fix that is with toggle bolts so that they can be retightened later without pulling through the sheetrock. But you want to just go ahead and grab each one of them on each end and just test them and make sure that they're good to go. Now, something that is bathroom specific, that's also whole home specific, but we particularly look for in bathrooms, is around here at the edge of the tub and behind the toilet, anywhere that these water sources are, check the baseboard and the drywall, because these are often going to have a lot of water damage. Now, over here to the toilet, there's quite a bit to check in the toilet. Number one, these lids are often cracked, so check the lid. Number two, well, that is the strangest flush mechanism I've ever seen. This is an eco flush. I've heard of these, but I haven't seen one in a rental before. But typically you're gonna look inside here and you're gonna see how everything looks in terms of the flush handle and in terms of the water level, how high the water level is, if your flapper's good, if your fill valve looks nice. You also wanna give the toilet a flush, and after that flush, you wanna watch it fill up and make sure that the fill valve is filling it quickly. Unfortunately, we don't have a fill valve on this one, but I'm sure y'all guys know what it looks like. You also want to grab the seat and wiggle it around. This is tight enough. Oftentimes these seats are extremely loose. And then you want to straddle the toilet and sort of rock back and forth and see how well connected to the floor it is. Luckily, this one seems to be connected very well. And now this is not required, but most toilets have caulk all the way around except for a couple inches in the back, and that's to let water escape if your lines get backed up and the toilet backs up all the way into the base. You'll see that water come out the back, so you'll know you have a problem. If you don't leave that gap in the back, then it's just going to try to go under this linoleum or tile or whatever you have. You also want to make sure that these bolt caps exist. There's no reason for them to not be there. They're cheap and easy. You also want to look at your supply line on the back and your shut-off valve on the back here. And I believe that is about it for the toilets. Oh, one more little thing here. Sometimes I find little cracks emanating from where the bolts are because they've been over-tightened. Now, if nobody's home and that crack decides to go ahead and spread, all of the water is going to flush out of here, and that's not going to be good. So make sure you don't see any cracks there, because now's the time that you can go ahead and replace those. And that basically covers the bathrooms. That's a very quick walkthrough for the bathrooms. Like I said, there is going to be more little minor details. You do want to use your checklist thoroughly, but that's essentially everything that you're looking for in a bathroom inspection. All right, guys, now we're going to look at the sliding glass doors here. Now, the first thing you can go ahead and check is make sure that it actually locks. And in fact, this one doesn't, so we'll be writing that one up. But you want to check the lock. You want to make sure that this handle is not loose. It's nice and sturdy to the door. As you open the door left and right, these should slide nice and smoothly. You shouldn't have to put a whole lot of effort into it. You also want to listen for grinding. If you hear grinding on the bottom, that's usually the bearings on the wheels. Something else you want to do is take a look at the tracks down here and see how dirty they are or aren't. Now, if you slide this door around and it bounces a lot, you also want to look at the center of this track, because those get dented in over time, and once that gets started, it never really stops. So on the outside of these doors as well, you're going to have a sliding screen door. This one doesn't even exist, so we're going to have to write that up, that we're going to need a new sliding screen door. And this door on the outside, there is a keyed lock on here, so we are going to check and make sure that we have the key for this lock, or that we change this out for a lock that does in fact have a key. And that's actually about it for the sliding glass doors. It's mostly just making sure that they're super smooth, making sure the track's clean, and that you don't hear any grinding. All right, guys, so exterior doors, especially these front doors, these are kind of our bread and butter. There's so many things that go wrong with these, and we really have to do a super good inspection. So one of the things you want to do, and it's not just going to be on the front door, it's going to be on any door in this house that's a keyed entry, is you want to check the key that you have on every single lock. And in fact, right off the bat here, this key, okay, it turns the deadbolt, but it took quite a few tries to turn the deadbolt. It's catching a lot, so we're probably going to write this up to get replaced. In fact, I would bet they don't even have the code for this. And then, of course, check it on all of the doorknobs. See, it actually doesn't work on this one. So right off the bat, I think what we're going to do is write this up and put some quick set rekeyable locks on here. Once you've gotten that checked out, you open the door, go ahead and ring that doorbell. The doorbell does work. It doesn't work quite properly, but it does work. So now go ahead and look at just the general condition of the front of the door. As you can see, we've got quite a few scrapes and dings on this, so we'll see if we have any matching paint here at the house for later. And if we don't, then before we leave, we're going to take a paint sample from this door so we can purchase the matching paint and get that taken care of. Now down here, you want to make sure that your sweep and your weatherproofing is good. You want to come over here, your actual weather stripping all the way around the perimeter of this door. You want to look at it and make sure that it's not all chewed up and eaten away. You want to make sure that your threshold is solid. You also, I didn't mention this, you want to wiggle these doorknobs and deadbolts around just to make sure they're secure. You also want to make sure that when you turn this knob, that this latch retracts all the way. What happens over time, especially if people turn these too hard, is there's a bar in there that'll get bent, and slowly over time this latch will stop retracting until you eventually get to the point that from outside the house you can't retract the latch, and then you've got a tenant kicking a door in so that they can get inside, and that is definitely not good. Now, something else you want to check is your strike plates over here. And with your strike plates, for example, this one has oversized screws that don't really fit and they're sticking out, so we probably want to do something about that. You also want to make sure that as you open and close the door, that the latches go in smoothly to see if you need to get those strike plates adjusted. Now, if they do need to be adjusted, if they're not perfect, you can also come up here and look at the hinges. Oftentimes these start getting loose. This one is actually in really great shape, luckily, but if your strike plates aren't working right, check your hinges and make sure that those screws are tight on there. Come inside and shut the door, and the next thing you want to do is just look all the way around the perimeter, and you want to make sure that you don't see any light at all coming through that door. I can see the tiniest bit of light on the bottom, so we're going to write that up, but we are going to mention how minor it is because we may not do anything about that in particular. But this basically covers your door specific inspection. Now while you're here, you can check out the trim and stuff if you want, but we're going to be covering that when we do the walls and the ceilings and the floors. Alright guys, so we're in the laundry room now, so I can show you the door from the laundry room into the garage. And the reason I show this to you is for a few reasons. Number one, this is considered an exterior door, so you're going to treat this as far as inspection the same way as the front door. However, there's one additional thing going on with these, which is these doors that go into the garage, these are required to have self-closing hinges. Now those bottom two are self-closing hinges. Somebody has replaced the top, however, as you can see, it's not self-closing, and that's because there's some pieces missing in here. So hopefully we can get these to work, but if we can't, we'll have to write this up and get some self-closing hinges put on. Otherwise, this door gets treated exactly like the front door. And we've got a nice bedroom door to start with right here. Now there's not as much to say about these because obviously we're going to do all the same checks as with the exterior doors, with the exception of we don't have weather stripping, etc. But we're still going to check the hinges and make sure that they're on there tightly. One difference with these is you do want to make sure that your bedrooms and your bathrooms have bed and bath knobs. Now bed and bath knobs are the ones that from inside the room somebody can easily lock and unlock, and from outside the room they can't easily lock and unlock it, but they do have a special tool to put through this hole in the case of emergencies and whatnot, or in case the door gets locked and then you walk out of the room. And then the final thing you want to check on these is when you shut them, of course, make sure everything latches well, but you also want to make sure oftentimes up around the top and the perimeter the door is going to rub on the frame, so you want to check your frame for rub marks and the top of the door for rub marks. And then finally, this is pretty obvious, this mirror was added by a tenant, I assume, so we're going to need to write it up to have the mirrors removed, the screw holes filled, which is going to mean painting over the screw holes, which is probably going to mean painting the entire surface of the door. But that basically covers the doors for us in this inspection process as far as the regular hinged doors. And then now we move to the closet doors. You've got two types. These are the bypass. You also have bifold. Now we don't have any bifold doors in this house, but the inspection process is similar. You want to look at all the places that it connects to the house. You want to make sure it opens and closes smoothly. You don't have to know everything about figuring out what's wrong with the door. You just need to know that all the parts and pieces are present and that it works. Now when it comes to these are actually in super nice shape. You want to look at the bottom and make sure your guide is in place and that it's solid. Oftentimes those guides are not there. Make sure you have your little shiny handles in here. Sometimes those are missing. When you slide this back and forth, you see how this one is just nice and smooth, real smooth. A lot of times what you'll get is it'll bounce around a lot. And when it bounces around a lot, that's because your rail up top is starting to get all dinged up, and every time you get a ding it bounces that door, so it comes down and makes more dings. These will go bad very fast. So while it's vacant and you're doing your inspection, if these aren't smooth, just go ahead and write them up for new head rails so that you can get them smooth. And then other than that, that's basically it for the doors. If you want, you can check to see, if the gaps on the sides are nice and even or not. And you do have to make sure they're in the right order. Somebody's made sure that these are relatively good. But that's basically it for your bypass doors. And like I said, the bifold doors, you'll know them when you see them and you can look them up. But you just got to make sure everything is smooth and attached tightly and functions as it's supposed to. All right, guys, moving on to windows. So the first thing, pretty much every window is going to have some sort of covering to it. So whether it's curtains or mini blinds, or in this case, vertical blinds, you want to check out your window coverings. You want to make sure that they open and close as intended. These seem to work all the way down as far as the louvers. And then go ahead and open it all the way up. Make sure that works. It does seem to work on this one. So now you know that your window coverings work. And like I said, if you have mini blinds or some other sort of window covering, just check it thoroughly and make sure it's all functional like it's supposed to be. Now, the first thing I look at is I come down here to these two bottom corners and the two top corners. Oftentimes, if you have any leaking going on around the window, that's where they're going to show, so you're going to be able to write that up right off the bat. Next thing you want to check is just taking a look at the glass and making sure you don't obviously see any cracks or anything like that. Open the window up, your screen, make sure number one that you have a screen, and number two that it's in good shape and it's doing its job. Slide the window back and forth. It should slide without too much effort. Close it all the way, and you always, everybody forgets this, you want to check these locks. Now, if you want to come take a look at this lock here, if you notice, it doesn't lock. See that? It just pushes the window away from there. So we'll slam it shut again. It kind of goes there, so we'll probably call this one good, although we're not too happy with it. If it's just a little bit off like that, which you will find pretty often, as you can see, you think you've locked it, but all you've done is created a gap here for air and insects to come through. So make sure you check those locks and that they actually function as intended on every single window. I'm going to write this up and just tell them about it, although I don't think they're going to want to do anything about it necessarily. And that's your windows, guys. You just want to make sure they slide smoothly, you want to make sure the locks work, and you want to make sure that your window coverings are there, there's no water damage, and there's no breaks. Okay guys, time to do electrical. So one of the first things you're going to want to do with electrical is just make sure that all your switches and outlets work. So turn on your switches and off your switches back and forth. Make sure they function as they're intended. When it comes to light fixtures and switches, you're often going to find remotes. So you do want to test the lights with your remote. And as you can see, I'm pushing buttons on this one and nothing is happening. So the remote for this room is not working. We're going to go ahead and write that up. We tested the light switches. Now you're going to need to have an outlet tester, and it's going to need to be one that does GFCI outlets as well. This is not GFCI, but you're going to need one. And you want to put that outlet tester in every single outlet and verify that it's grounded and verify that everything is working properly with that outlet. And I'm going to give you a little tip. If you have a two outlet, like a two gang outlet like this one, if one of them isn't working, find a nearby switch and flip those switches up and down with your tester in it. Oftentimes what you'll have is you'll have one side of one outlet controlled by a switch so you can turn lamps on. And you want to take your GFCI tester, we're not going to walk all the way in there, but you're going to want to take it to the kitchen and the bathrooms and anywhere else, such as a laundry room. Anywhere that there is a source of water within 6 feet needs to be GFCI. Or you're going to see an outlet that doesn't appear to be GFCI, but it's going to have a data plate on it that says it's GFCI. Make sure you plug that in and hit that GFCI test button. Again, this is within 6 feet of any source of water in the house, need to be GFCI, and they need to test good for GFCI. Now, while you're at it with the remotes and the switches and you're looking at the lights, you're also going to want to make sure that all the bulbs are on. This is when you're going to document how many bad bulbs you have, as well as what type of bulbs are bad, so you can make a nice long laundry list so whoever comes to work on the property can take care of that. Now, also included under electrical is going to be our smoke detectors. You have hardwired smoke detectors and you have plug-in smoke detectors. I'm not going to climb all the way up the ladder for this video for the sake of time. However, you're going to want to go up there and push the button and test it. You're also going to want to pull it down, and you're not going to find an expiration date on the back of one of these. What you're going to find instead of an expiration date is the date it was manufactured. Most of them are about 10 years or 11 years that they consider them to be expired, but they're not usually going to say. So you're going to need to look up your style of smoke detector and find out if it's a 7-year, a 10-year, or an 11-year. And then you can go ahead and document whether it's got the batteries, look at everything, make sure it's in good shape, make sure your mounting plate is tight, and pop it back on there. And then finally, you're also looking under electrical, you're looking at your cable outlets and your phone jacks. There's a phone jack on the other side over there, and you're just going to look at those and make sure that they're solid. You're not testing them to see if you're getting cable television. You're not testing them to see that you're actually getting a dial tone on your phone, but you want to make sure if they're there that everything is just solidly mounted. And then other than that, that's basically all the electrical that's going on in the house. You just want to make sure that whether it's a light fixture, whether it's a smoke detector, a wall switch, an outlet, cable jack, phone jack, you just want to make sure that anything in the house that is electrical, that receives electricity, is working. All right, guys, welcome to my laundry room. So the first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and flip on the switch for the exhaust fan. I can hear it running, so we're good to go there. We're going to take a look at this dryer. Number one, we'll just open it up, make sure that nothing's physically broken that we can see. Spin that drum a little bit. Seems like the drum does in fact spin. You're going to go ahead and turn it on and just run it a little bit so that you know that it works. While you're here, you can clean out the lint filter. They'll appreciate that. But you want to go around to the back, and I'm not going to do this on this video, but you do want to go around to the back and you want to disconnect the hose here and check to see if all of this needs to get cleaned out or not. Most move outs that we do, we're pretty much always going to be cleaning out the laundry duct. Same thing over here on the washing machine. Just open it up, give it a little spin, make sure everything seems good, you don't hear any grinding. Go ahead and turn it on and run yourself a load just to make sure you don't find any leaks. You also want to come up here to your supply lines, open them and close them, check them for leaks obviously, make sure your drain hose is where it goes in there. And that's about it for the laundry rooms. Really the only thing specific to these laundry rooms is the washer and dryer and the plumbing and electrical that go along with it. So as long as these are good, your laundry room specific list is also good. Now obviously the first thing that's unique to the garage is the garage door, so you want to test the door out. I'm pushing the button here and nothing is happening. This garage door is not working, and I've already been in here today, so what you're going to see is this is quite obviously the issue here, so we're easily going to write this up. Hopefully that doesn't take too much to fix. And then inside the garage is usually where you're going to find your HVAC system and your water heater. Now these are all going to be different, so I'm not going to give you a whole lot of specifics to look for, but a few pointers are: number one, your hot water heater should be sitting in some sort of drain pan. This one is not, so we're going to write that up, and they may or may not do anything about it, but we are going to write it up. You want to make sure that your hot water setting on your water heater is set relatively low as opposed to relatively high, because again, you don't want children burning themselves on full hot water. Go ahead and look up top. This one is a gas water heater, so you're going to have this exhaust duct going through. Honestly, this one does not look quite right to me. I can tell just by looking at this tape before I even touched it that this is not the high temperature tape that belongs on here, and because of that, all of the adhesive is gone and the tape's just fallen off. So we're going to write that up, and we're going to have somebody certified come out to look at that. The other thing you want to look at is this line right here. This is for when it blows out from overpressure. Now oftentimes what you'll find is that these copper joints here are actually not soldered, and that's not allowed. They do have to be soldered joints. We're not just moving regular temperature air out of the house. We're trying to take superheated air, perhaps with superheated water, and blow it away from the house rather than into the house. And if this is not a soldered joint, it's going to blow into the house. So the next thing you're going to look at is the HVAC system. These are always going to be different, so there's really nothing in particular that I can tell you that you absolutely are going to be looking for on every single one. But this one I can tell is obviously a gas because we have, again, the same tape and the same ducting. None of this looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and write it up to have it inspected as well. And then you're also going to find your filter access, usually at the bottom of these. Now, there's also some places in the house where you're going to have filters on the ceiling, so you do want to check those and you want to document if the filter is there. Also, go ahead and document what size the filter is for future reference, but you want to make sure your filters in the house and at your HVAC unit are swapped out, and they almost never are going to be after people have moved out. And that's honestly about it for the garage. We don't really worry about, for a garage, when you look at these walls, these are unfinished, unpainted walls. That's not something we worry about with garages much, unless the owner of the property just simply asks you to make sure that the garage is in the same shape. And one last thing I did just see, these patches reminded me of it. You're going to look for the water damage down here. Now, this is not really all that bad. This is not unusual. I wouldn't worry about that. But sometimes around the HVAC unit, you are going to find some black mold and mildew all over the place. So if you find that, you definitely want to do something about that. And then one last thing on the floor is you want to make sure that the floor doesn't need to be pressure washed. Now, if it looks something like, let's say this over here, if it looks like this area, that's not typically something you're going to worry about writing up, because garage floors just are dirty. But stuff like this, you're going to want to go ahead and write up, because this needs to be pressure washed off of the floor. And by the way, you're also going to be checking the driveway when you do the exterior. If the garage door opens, typically when you arrive, you're going to just open up that door and look at them both at the same time. But this garage floor definitely does need to be written up as well. All right, guys, the next thing we're going to be looking at here is a general all rooms. When I say all rooms, I mean living room, kitchen, bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, pantries, ceilings, floors. This is all the stuff in the house that is not specific to a particular room that you're going to find in basically every room. So starting right here, we're going to start just by looking at the walls. And this is a nice obvious example. As you can see, it looks like the tenant tried to fix all of their own nail holes. So this wall is just absolutely covered in what we call patch and paint, which means we need to patch it up and then we need to paint it. And so I can show y'all how this app integrates in here. Basically what we do when we're using the app is I'm at the step where it says to check the walls for hardware holes, screws, etc., and document those. So all I've got to do is just click on this section, and then I go ahead and hit the microphone button, and I say the walls are full of nails and other pieces of hardware and bad patches. They need to be repaired and painted, and then turn that off. And then now I can just click right to the next section. But before you move on, go ahead, and your phone may work different than mine. I hit my power button twice and the camera comes up immediately. So after you write that down, then you're gonna just go ahead and get your camera, take a picture, and then swipe back. Brings you right back here to the app, and you move right on to the next line. So you're checking the walls, and I do highly suggest when you do this, and this is just based on my personal experience, it's easy to think that you really know what you're doing and that you don't need to use a checklist. Now, I haven't been having mine in my hand with you because I'm trying to make some content that y'all can follow without getting bored to death while I read every line. But I do want to stop and say, I do think that you need to use this line by line. You need to read every line. And specifically, when we're checking walls, ceilings, flooring, baseboard, etc., this whole house stuff, I highly suggest that you pick something like walls, and when you do the walls, you go ahead and walk the entire house, and you only look at the walls. You look at them top to bottom, ignore the baseboard, ignore the ceiling, ignore the floors, and just do the walls all the way around the house. Document those as you go. Now, one small tip I have, if you're, let's say, a handyman who's going to be doing the actual work later, and I wouldn't bother on this wall because it's obvious, but I carry some blue tape with me so that when there's walls that only have one or two little holes in them, but you don't want to miss them, you put a piece of blue tape next to those holes. And you can do this with this entire list, whether it's the faucet, the outlets, or whatever, use your blue tape. But that's how you document this. You just go ahead and click on it, hit your microphone button, say what you need to say, click your microphone button off, turn on your camera, take your picture, swipe back, you're right back in the app, and then you move on. So we looked at walls. Let's go ahead and take a look at closets, because all the closets in the pantry are the same kind of deal. That's all the extra, all the spaces that are included in all rooms. So you come in here and right off the bat I can see we don't even have a clothes rod in here, and you'd be surprised how often you find that there aren't any clothes rods. But we've already inspected doors, so when we come to look at the closets, other than looking at the walls and the ceiling and the floor and the baseboard, we're really basically checking out the shelving and the brackets and the clothes rods just to make sure that everything is there. And then do come inside and look back as well, because oftentimes you'll find hardware or you'll find things screwed to the walls, and you don't want to miss any of those things. So moving on, and I might say this may be under doors because I wasn't using my list, but part of what you can also look for when you're walking around doing this is down here, as you can see, we're missing the door stopper. And one of the things, again, as I was just saying, when you go through the house and you're looking at all of these things, it would be really easy to think you know what you're doing and just walk room to room, and you're going to find, let's say, 4 door stoppers missing. Whereas if you would have walked through the entire house only looking for door stoppers, you might find that 6 of them are missing. So on this portion, to reiterate, I think this is very important, you should pick one thing at a time, and it does mean that you walk the whole house 8 times, but pick one thing, walk the entire house, and write them all down one line item at a time. So moving on again, let's go ahead and take a look at baseboard. You're going to check all the baseboard on all the walls, and mostly what you're looking for is, other than them just being dirty and gouged, is that they're sealed to the wall on the top, and this is also where you're going to find signs of water damage. Now, whether that water came from the roof and leaked it down the wall and then swelled the baseboard up, or whether it's because it flooded outside and came in from the outside, you want to look at the baseboards specifically for water damage is what I'm usually looking for. Moving on, we also want to look at the ceiling. And when we look at the ceilings, again, I suggest you do this exclusively through the entire house. You're looking for signs of water damage. Now, you don't see much on the ceiling here, but if you're able to see from the angle that you're looking at right now, there is water that has flowed all the way down this wall and separated the paint from the drywall all the way down. So that's some significant water damage that we're actually going to need to write up, because all of this is going to have to get scraped off and removed. Then it's going to have to get a skim coat of joint compound. Then it's going to have to get new texture and new paint, which we're going to be doing paint all around anyway, so the paint isn't the biggest deal. But this is exactly the type of water damage that we're looking for. And if you look at the ceiling, you can see where the bubbling is on the ceiling as well. So next, we're looking at the flooring. And once again, I'm going to repeat this too many times because I think it's necessary. Check all the flooring out independently. You don't need to check everything ceiling to floor all at the same time. Pick one item, and when it's time for flooring, walk around the house and look at all the flooring. When you're looking at the flooring, especially look at where carpet transitions to anything else, because underneath all of this is going to be tack strips, and the tack strips, if they start coming up, those tack strips are going to get into people's feet, and you just really don't want that to happen. Here's the tack strip right here, and this carpet is no longer attached to it. So somebody's going to have to lay new tack strip down, or maybe move this back a little bit, or stretch the carpet forward so we can get this carpet back under that aluminum strip right there so that people don't hurt their feet. But like I said, do the whole house flooring all at once. And then finally, let's come take a look at this pantry. This is going to be very common. People put all their stuff in and out of these pantries. A lot of times they're oily, a lot of times they're greasy. The canned goods are made out of, the cans are made out of steel and they scratch. And if you take a look at this, this is extremely dirty. This entire thing is going to need a good scrubbing with some soap to get the oils off so that the paint sticks well. And then it's going to need a new paint job top to bottom. So you're going to repeat this process through the entire house. You're going to look at every ceiling, every wall, every baseboard, all of the flooring, all of the closets, all of the pantries, all of the areas that are included in the whole house that are not specific to a particular room that has a particular purpose. Okay guys, most people don't think about this when they're doing the exterior inspection, but the first thing you got to check is actually the mailbox. It's got to be functional. By functional, I mean the lid needs to open and close. This one's pretty tough, but it's not functional, so we're going to leave that alone. You want to make sure your flag is there and comes up. You want to make sure the box is connected to the stand that it's on and that the stand is solid. This is not the best one I've ever seen, but it's okay. And I verified that it does have the mailbox numbers printed legibly on the front of the mailbox so that the mailman can identify it. Next thing you're gonna do, you're already out here in the driveway, check out the driveway and see how clean it is. Now, we're not worried about, again, similar to inside the garage, we're not worried about this. That's perfectly fine. What we're looking for is large grease stains that can be easily pressure washed off and that need to be. So once you get over here, you're also gonna look at all of the trim along the garage door, and this is frequently bad. This is actually one of the only times I've ever done one of these inspections and seen all of the weather stripping for the entire garage door be in good shape. Then you're gonna check out the garage door itself, come over here to the side and look down, because if there are any issues, this is typically where you're gonna see it. There's gonna be dents and stuff in here. Go ahead and check this handle if you have the key for it and if it's unlocked. Now, normally, we don't even mess with those, but you do need to check it and at least document, does it have a key or does it not? And if it does the key work? You're also looking at all of the stucco out here. For example, right up in this corner, as you can see, there's a big old chip of stucco missing. You're gonna document all of those as you go. Try to get the code for the garage door opener so that you can use the code to open the door and verify that the code still works. You also want to check out all your exterior lights, and you want to make sure you have house numbers clearly legible from the road. Make sure trees and whatnot haven't started growing in front of wherever these are, because this is what emergency services is going to need to find this house in the event that they really need to. Now, for your exterior lights, you're often going to have a switch inside the house that can control them. However, you're also often going to have a photo sensor on the outside of the house out here. And these photo sensors, they may be on one side or the other, typically near a circuit breaker panel, or they may be somewhere altogether different. But they're little teeny tiny round holes that get the light from the sun so that they know if it's daytime or nighttime, and they use that to turn on and off the lights. Now, they may be exclusively in control of the lights, or they may work in conjunction with a switch on the inside. But if there is a photo sensor, you want to make sure it's there, because that's part of the safety for the neighborhood, as everyone's lights coming on at the same time. Keep on walking around. A lot of times you're gonna have these little drain pipes from ACs and whatnot sticking out here. It's fine if they're there. That's not really the optimum placement, but at the very least you wanna make sure that they're not eating all the cement away here, because that will also happen frequently. Now, you're also gonna have outdoor outlets quite frequently, and what you need to make sure with these is that it's either got these types of individual covers for each socket, or that you've got one big whole waterproof cover. Now, you can cover that under electrical, of course, but we're already out here looking at all this, so I'm gonna make sure you see it. But under your eaves, every one of these little holes, those are ventilation holes for the attic. And back behind those ventilation holes, there's a very fine mesh screen intended to let air in and out, but not to allow critters in and out. So you're gonna wanna check all those out. And then at the same time while you're at it, you're looking at the fascia, especially on the corners of the fascia. Quite frequently is where the rot is going to start, but you want to be checking all the fascia out so you can find the rot if there is any. You also just want to look at the landscaping in general, so that you're almost always going to send a landscaper if you're turning over a property, but it's good to get a general sense of exactly what it looks like before and after. So take plenty of pictures of that, and also make sure, for example, with this tree here, I don't see any sign of it bringing up the sidewalk or the driveway here. The roots sometimes can get under these. So you're going to want to identify that as soon as you can, rather than waiting for it to become a really huge issue. Also, just being generally observant, you'll notice things like this on the ground. So this is far more than just landscaping. There is a whole mess of broken glass mixed in with the gravel down here. But they're probably going to have to remove some of these pavers and then dig up all this gravel and dispose of it and put some new gravel down, or maybe they'll be able to rake some extra gravel from the yard in here, but you definitely can't have all this glass on the ground. Now, while you're outside, and we covered this under windows on the inside as well, but as long as you're on the outside, this is another good time to be looking at your windows and your screens. And you won't be able to see it here because the lighting isn't quite right. but this is a fiberglass mesh screen and it's very old. Now I wouldn't replace this one yet, but what I would be doing is noting when the sun is out. I just know these screens well enough because I've seen them. When the sun is out, you're going to see a lot of shiny glistening on the screen, and that's the fiberglass reflecting the sunlight. So these screens may be good now, but we are going to be prepared to replace them in the future. Also at the windows, these down here are weep holes. So when it rains really hard and the wind blows really hard, sometimes water can get up in there. When it does, you can see it from the inside of the house, but these are built with these weep holes so that the water can drain out. So make sure the weep holes exist and make sure that they don't look blocked. Also go around the corners of the windows and check that the stucco, siding, trim, whatever it is around the window, make sure there's no cracks that need to be filled in with all of that. Moving around the side of the house, again, check all your fascia corners. Check your fascia all the way down, but especially check those corners because that is where the rot starts. And then when you come to the gate, you want to make sure this one is actually super nice. You want to make sure that without a lot of effort, these gates shut and latch the way that they're intended. You also just want to check the pickets. These are pretty old and they're not in super amazing shape, but none of them are falling off. None of them are actually rotten. This one is a tiny bit loose, so we may ask them to tighten that up, but see, there it goes right there. So this gate's actually in decent shape. You do want to come over here and you want to check the bar on this gate that mounts it to the block wall or whatever it's mounted to. Make sure that's nice and solid, not coming off. Same thing on this side. And then as you walk down here, you're just checking the same things. You're checking these windows for caulking and sealant around the sides to make sure water can't get in. Take a look at those weep holes. Take a look at the screens. Take a look for weeds. There's one small weed there, but we need to know what we're letting the landscapers look for. All the way down, we're looking at the eaves. We're making sure that the paint isn't peeling and coming off. We're making sure that the vent holes are there, that the mesh is behind them. And look here, we've got a perfect example finally. We come to this corner and we've got a rotten fascia corner, and if you look right here, that looks like a 2x12 that is actually completely rotten up there at the top. So that's going to be a bigger job we're going to have to write up because we don't want that rot spreading onto the roof especially. Now we're going to look at the same thing. These posts out here, kind of like these corners, when these posts stick out, those tend to rot a lot as well. And then all of this lattice here is not in great shape. I'm going to recommend that we probably pull all of this down. However, it is still up and it's not in horrible shape, but we definitely are going to document that it's all cracked and kind of falling apart because what we don't want to happen is to think that when the new tenants move in, that everything was in good shape, and then we're trying to charge them for that when they move out. This is definitely in bad shape. It's not going to last. And then moving down the house even further, we've got the gutters. Now we're going to look at the gutters a little more closely when we get up on the roof, but gutters, as far as I can tell, are always bad. They're either full of debris or there's something else wrong with them, but gutters just really seem to be an issue. And again, over here on this corner, we've got more rotten fascia. Now we're also going to look at these posts. This post is pretty old and it's starting to get a lot of weathering out here, but it's still a solid post and it's not rotting. And then on the bottom of these posts, you do have to have brackets that keep the post up off of the concrete so the bottoms of the post don't rot out. You're going to find a lot of drywall on these porch ceilings. It's a horrible idea. All of the joints are always coming loose and the tape is falling out. And we've already looked at the slider doors, but this is a very obvious example here. This one is in horrible condition, the sliding screen door. And when you're checking all the lighting, don't forget to include your exterior lighting with it. Down here on the ground for the landscapers, you want to look for things like this where the actual plumbing for the landscaping for the drip irrigation is coming up. And you do want to check your plants in general. Now, you don't need to test the irrigation system, but you can look at these and say, okay, it appears that they're getting water, right? They're not all old and dried out. It is summertime in Arizona, so they're probably not going to be super green, but they seem like they're in good shape. And there's another gate. We would go and test that gate just like the others. Things like this typically are not original to the home when the renter moved in. So most likely what we're going to try to do is probably remove this. We may even just leave the base because that's a lot of dirt to remove, but all of this is getting ugly. It's all rotten. It's going to fall apart. The tenant probably put this in, but we'll reference the old pictures and everything, and we'll find out if they did, and we'll tear these down, but we're definitely going to document that they're here, because that's not normal. Now also guys, don't forget, a lot of these places have exterior lighting. Most of the time in a rental, these don't work anymore. They rarely get maintained. But again, nonetheless, whether the owner is going to want to do something about it or not, we do want to document that they exist and that they do not work. And then back here, we don't have to go all the way back, but we've got a shed, so we're just going to inspect that shed for general condition and security. Usually sheds aren't going to be in great shape. Now if we were in a super nice neighborhood, we'll do a detailed inspection of the shed, but this one, again, I won't waste your time on video checking out a tiny little shed, but we're going to make sure it's not rusted. We're going to make sure the roof's not leaking. We're going to make sure that there's nothing too unusual going on with it. And again, we walk the whole exterior, we check out all the walls, all the windows. This window's missing a screen, for example, and we just do the entire perimeter of the home just like that. And finally, last but not least, we're coming up on the roof. This is the very last piece we're going to be inspecting today. Now right off the bat, I can look at this and see all of the coating is coming off. This looks like flat roll roofing underneath with some sort of asphalt coating on top. The whole thing's coming apart. Now luckily we saw down below that we don't have any damage to the ceiling, so now is the time to definitely get this with a new roof on it. Now I also said when we were down below we're going to check out these gutters. Believe it or not, these are in decent shape with the exception that we're missing a downspout on the other end. So we do need to get a downspout added, but other than that, these gutters are not full of anything, they're not rusted, and they're actually in pretty great shape, all things considered. So as I get up here, the first thing I'm noticing, other than those obvious patches over there, is on the edges of all these shingles, I'm seeing all this white furry stuff. That's the fiberglass that's actually inside of these asphalt shingles. And again, if the sun was out right now, you would actually be seeing the roof glittering and shimmering, and that's all of the fiberglass that's coming out of the shingles, making it look that way. Now, if you look right here, we've actually got a piece of a shingle missing. If you look over here, this one is actually folded up. In fact, it's just completely come off. So this whole roof, we're gonna need an estimate to re-roof. Now, I've already been to this property a couple months ago because they asked for these patches to be done temporarily. They do already know that they need a new roof here, and that's gonna get done, I think, in September because it's monsoon season, so that's when all the roofers are extremely busy. Now, all these black pipes sticking up, the black pipes are actually just vents for the wastewater system, so they don't need any caps. However, any other pipes that are going to all your exhaust fans and whatnot, they all need to have waterproof caps. Looking around here, it seems like they do all have waterproof caps, luckily. And this is going to be the vent for the water heater and the heater in the garage. So you want to go around to all of these. Here's a great example here. This one should have, number one, it should be down further. There's staples coming up. And again, we're getting a new roof on this one eventually anyways, but this needs to be a little tighter. This should have been sealed. And for example, like this one was sealed. Some of the sealant is cracking off, but you also want to check that the sealant is on these. Now, once you're on top of the roof, that's basically it. You're also going to have slate and tile roofs. Those are much more complex to figure out, but you're going to look at those basically just to make sure things aren't broke. The tile and the slate is not broke, and that it's not sliding down from its position. But yeah, that's it, guys. This is the roof. We've basically done this entire house now. I may not have mentioned when you're doing the yard, you also want to check out the wall or the fence or whatever it is that's keeping the yard contained. But that's it. We've now inspected this entire property. All right, guys, so I want to thank you if you stuck with me all the way through to the end of this video. I know this was an extremely long one. It's been a very long day for me as well, but I do appreciate you watching it all the way through. So something I want to let you know, I think the most important takeaway from this is what you watched today was not the inspection itself. The inspection itself takes anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and you really need to use your list when you do the inspection. What I tried to do was walk you through and make sure that I touched on most, if not all, of the points. But the idea is that you can take this list that I have, you can take it on the Jobber app, and you can start at step 1, and you can go through this house, and if you just follow every single step and swipe up one step at a time and document everything, you're gonna find all the issues that are wrong with this property. You're gonna be able to do a true, thorough property inspection that I don't think anybody would be able to come behind you and really find much of anything that wasn't extremely minor that you missed. So with all that being said, just make sure you use a list, make sure you're extremely thorough, and just go through this entire process step by step. And the end result is going to be that you identify all the problems as soon as possible. You can get them all assigned out to the necessary vendors as soon as possible, get everything fixed, and ultimately get new renters back into this house. Because what are we doing if not trying to hurry up and get renters back into this house? Like I said before, a vacant property is a liability. An occupied property is an asset. Our job is to make sure that our clients' assets remain assets. So again, thank you for joining me today. I hope the list is useful. If you have anything to add, please do let me know, whether you go down to the comments to add it, or you can email me personally at bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. Anything I've missed on this list, because I'm also not perfect, anything I've missed, if it's a legit item that should be on the list, I'll make sure to add it to that list before I start sending it out to everybody. And finally, one last reminder, go down to the description of this video where you can click on the link to request this list from me, and I will get it sent to you personally. There's also a link in the description of this video to get your free trial of Jobber, which is where this list is going to be. It'll live on your phone on the app as you walk through the house doing the inspection. If you use my link to get your free trial, I can send you the list. You can get it imported into your Jobber account, do your inspections, and using my link will get you a 14-day free trial and 20% off for the first 6 months. Other than that, I hope you guys are all out there killing it, and I will see you next time.